Hey, I had an amazing experience just a few weeks ago. I got to go to my first Ohio State football game, all right? Now, I didn't grow up in Ohio. I don't know if you knew that. I grew up in Pennsylvania and lived in Virginia for a while. And so this was an experience. And this is Andrew. He's my first grader. He's about 6 years old, turning 7 here. And he got to come too, which was just awesome. And I wish our seats were right there. They weren't that good. Okay, but we went up there and we got to experience everything. And I got to tell you, we were driving down 71, and this was the Cincinnati game. Anyone else there? Anyone go to that? Yeah, you were there. I saw a picture. You and your dad. Yeah. OH. Okay, so I never had been through this before. Like, I am totally like an Ohio State noob. I had no idea. And we were on our way down. I went with a group of people. 71 was closed that day. Did you get stuck in that? Right. They closed it at Polaris, and they made everyone get off there, the mall. No joke. Okay, so literally, we were backed up 10 miles by the time we got there. And we were we were in the first 10 cars when they reopened it. And we're just like, whoa! We're like flying down the highway, and we couldn't go too fast because the cops were like making sure people didn't take off. But we went down there, we went in, but because of that backup, it cost us like an hour and 20 minutes. And by the time we were parking, we were literally walking in right before the band. So, we're marching, and it was like, how many of you guys have been to an Ohio State game before? Okay, you've experienced that. It was like being in a wave. You know what I'm talking about? It was a wave of people, and we're just like flowing. I was like in a river, and I have my first grader Andrew. I'm like, he's gonna get taken. Like, this is gonna be taken all over again. I'm gonna have to, I will find you. So basically, he was like, I'm a little tired. I'm like, okay, let's ride on my back. I'm like holding him, like, don't touch my kid. So we're going through on this river, and we're of people and crossing over through the crosswalks, and we get to the tunnel. Do you know about the tunnel? Have you guys walked through the tunnel? Okay. Right, to get to the stadium, you have to go in between, I think it's a field house and either like another building. And there's this tunnel. And literally, you are surrounded by people. The tunnel is packed full of people, shoulder to shoulder. And we're walking through. And I felt like I was in the gladiator games. I was just like, what is going to happen? And you had someone go, oh, and it's echoing off this tunnel. And we haven't even gotten to the stadium yet. And we're just like marching. I'm just like, what is this? Like, this is the best day of my life. Like, people have told me about this moment. Like, I got to tell you, I went to Liberty for college. Not quite the same experience. Let me just say that, okay? Great school, loved it. They didn't have a tunnel, okay? So this tunnel is just like, and it's just like people, you could feel the anticipation, and it's like shoulder to shoulder. It took us forever to get up, all the way to like nosebleed, and I'm just looking down at this sea of red, and I'm just like, unbelievable. And when the band came out, and like that weirdo that's just like, going crazy, I was just like, I was on my feet cheering, and I don't even like the Buckeyes yet, okay? So, but it made me a convert. But I tell you what it made me think about. I was like, man, this is like a religion. Like, no joke, isn't it? Anyone? It felt like, I was like, man, if any other culture in history, like 1,000 years ago, was just like able to see some video of this moment, they're like, they're going to temple for sacrifices. Like literally, that's what they would think. It was that potent of a moment. You could feel it. It was thick. I was like, what is going on? It was like this, and they have their order of service. They have their music, and they have, they even have, they have it all. It's just like, it's almost like, man, I wish church was this fun, right? Like, but it was unbelievable. And I thought, don't we all long to be part of something like that? Like, doesn't that just tap into this desire in our heart for like that moment? You could call it the GOAT, right? Greatest of all time. Okay, that moment where you're just like, yes! And to see that, the best game that was ever played, or that best play, or maybe it's that concert that everyone wishes, that NF concert that everyone wishes they could have gone to, or whatever it is, it's just like, wasn't there one in Columbus like last week? Okay. Yeah, but whatever it is, it's like there's that thing, and we all long for it, don't we? We long to experience greatness. And if we were honest, it goes even deeper than just wanting to be there for that moment. In our heart of hearts, we kind of want to be the GOAT. We want to, if we're really honest, we want to be on that field and be the one everyone's screaming for. Many of us, at least most of us, right? And so like we're tapping into something. And what I think we see here is that all of us worship something. Every one of us worships something. We are worshipers to the core. We were made to worship. Okay, and we're going to talk for the next 3 weeks about counterfeit gods. Because I believe our culture is full of false worship. And it doesn't look like it might have 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Even like 2,000 years ago in Rome, where you had statues and you could identify gods, right? Or even like today in India, if you were to go, there's idols that represent gods everywhere. It doesn't quite look like that in our culture, does it? But we have our gods. We have our gods, and we worship them. We worship them. And so I want to talk a little bit about that this morning. But we were made to worship. Blaise Pascal, who was a really smart dude in the 1500s, he said this: there's a God-shaped vacuum, that's like a hole, right, in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God, the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ. Okay, just look at this first part. I want you to emphasize this. There's a God-shaped hole. I think that's what causes us to be worshipers. We're constantly chasing after things, trying to fill that hole. It's that sense of longing for something great, for something greater. And sometimes we fill it with ourselves. Sometimes we fill it with someone else. Sometimes we fill it with things. But what I want us to see is that we are worshipers to the core. And because we have this hole in our heart that I believe only God can fill, our hearts are idol factories. Let me tell you what I mean by that. An idol is anything you give your ultimate affection, your sense of worth, your desire, your worship. And so that hole in our hearts, it creates idols in our lives, things we worship. Okay, it could be, again, like I said, people, it could be stuff, it could be things, it could be an idea like success, like popularity, right? And you know, because you become controlled by these idols. How many likes did I get? How many shares did I have? How many friends do I have? Follows do I have? Or how many points did I score? What was my PR? You know, we are defined, and we just begin defining ourselves by these different things, don't we? Our hearts are made to worship. And it could be things like possessions. It could be money. You know, I think a lot of you are young. I hope you're not stressed about money. But some of you guys, like, you literally, it's like money is already becoming a thing. And maybe you have seen that in your parents. Maybe you've seen that destroy a family. Like when someone passes away and leaves an inheritance, and you've seen that destroy a family over what? Like money? Really? But we make that a god. Sex. Our culture is sex saturated. It's everywhere. You can't watch a football game without seeing sex being sold. It's everywhere. People. How many of you know that guy or that girl, man, that is in that dysfunctional relationship? Okay, come on, be honest. Don't point at the person next to you. Yeah. Okay, and you're just like, dude, drop them. You know, girl, stop. Just stop, right? You know, why are you doing that? And they're just like, I know I should have dumped him like 4 years ago. Back in 8th grade. But he completes me, you know. It's just like, and it's so messed up. You're like, no, he brings out the worst in you. He's not helping you become who you should be. But we become, and sometimes it's not just a romantic person, right? It could be your friend group. And it's like, you're just paranoid that you're going to do something to screw up your friend group. I don't want to end up on the outs. Guys, I knew a guy, I talked to him, he graduated not too long ago. And he literally quit the cross-country team because he was being bullied and picked on. And he wanted so bad to just be, and he was a great runner, he wanted so bad just to be part of that in crowd. It led him to the point of even considering suicide because he wanted to belong. He wanted to be a part. And he was rejected because he realized no one wants me. And being wanted, being part of the in crowd was his God. You know, for some people it's food. I mean, the obesity statistics in our country is just, it's horrible. And it's like, it's obvious, like, we worship food. We know people, like, for some reason they take pictures and put pictures of food on Instagram like all the time. Okay, stop! It's making me hungry all the time. You know, it's like, look what I'm eating. You know, and it's just like I feel like everyone's eating gourmet steak all the time, and I just want some. Okay, if you're gonna put a picture up, share the food. Okay. So popularity, right? And we feel that. You guys, you know, you're the first generation that like all has iPhones. You know, and you say, yeah, like the four of you are like, don't have one. You're like, ooh, I feel, yeah. Okay, you still have a cell phone probably, and if you don't, your mom has an iPhone, and my mom didn't. Okay, so whatever. But most of you guys have phones. No one in high school, when I was in high school, had smartphones. But with that has come social media, right? Which I could see your generation just throwing in the trash can because you see how it's destroying people, right? It's just dysfunctional. Power. Being in control of your life. Having power over other people, manipulating other people. All these things can become your gods. I put a survey up on Instagram this week, and I said, which counterfeit god is more common? This one between success, and it was crazy. Thank you guys for voting, but like everyone had over 50 votes. So I was like, man, this is a great story, all right. So which counterfeit god is more common? 41% said success, 59% said sex. Okay, which counterfeit god is more common? A guy or a girl or popularity? 41% to 59. Okay, and then this last one, which counterfeit god is more common? Fame or fortune? 41, 59. Oh no, 35, 65. Okay, that's what you guys said. But what that tells me too is that even though, like say on this question, like 35 people said fortune, 20 or 25 said fame. Right? And so even though maybe one out, the issue is you see that people are putting too much priority on these things, right? People are worshiping these things. They're making their life about these things. You see, an idol, here's the scary thing. Idols are most often good things that have taken too significant of a place in our lives. Do you understand that? You see, a lot of times we think, I don't want false God, I want idols. We think that they're just purely bad things. But in some sense, like even all these that I had up here, in some sense, having a relationship with a guy or girl isn't necessarily bad. Sex in marriage is amazing. Okay? It is, okay? It's not something we should, as followers of Jesus, be afraid of. God made sex. It's not something, but when it has the wrong place, guys, it just destroys everything. Success. It's not bad to aspire to be great at something. I hope you do. I don't want you sitting on the couch. I'm not going to be anything. I hope none of you think that way. I want you to aspire. But when success becomes your God, it will destroy you. What about popularity? Some people are made to influence others. But if it becomes all about you and not about others, it becomes a god. Fame, fortune. Money isn't evil in and of itself. Idols very often, and even most often I would say, are actually a good thing that just has taken too significant of a place in your life. Does that make sense? So if you want to identify an idol, I'd ask you a few questions, okay? First, I think an idol is anything more important to you than God. Only God is worthy of all your attention. Only God, nothing else. So it's anything that's more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination. All right, so that's why we're going to be talking about it. And in this kind of logo thing, we have a few different gods, but this isn't representative of all of them. There's some. If you like to read, if you're a nerd and you want to read like me, okay, Counterfeit Gods by Tim Keller is a phenomenal book. I got the audiobook and listened to it, and I've read through at least half of it again. And let me tell you, I'll be sharing probably not next week, but the following, one area that it just tore my heart to shreds. And I was just like, man, I have made such an idol out of this. And I would encourage you, if you like to read, do that. Otherwise, be here the next 3 weeks. Let's lean into counterfeit gods together. Exodus 20, verse 3. Read this with me. You shall have no other gods before me. Okay, that's one of the 10 commandments right off the bat, right? That he says, you shall have no other gods before me. Similarly, a few chapters later in Exodus, it says this. Let's read this together. You shall worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. You see, God, if he's true, and I'm not going to assume everyone here believes in God, okay? I do, and we gather together to talk about God and what I think he can do in your life. And I'm glad you're here. If you don't, listen in. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. But God, if he does exist, if he is who he says he is the ultimate being, okay? The Bible says that God spoke, and what happened? Everything came into being. Okay, this being is bigger than we can imagine. He's so much bigger, so much more powerful. If he's all-knowing, he knows everything. God is huge, and he is worthy. That word almost isn't strong enough because he demands all worship. And then we, as those who have been made by God, say, you know what? I'm going to live for this. I'm going to live for myself, or I'm going to give my ultimate sense of fulfillment to fill in the blank, whatever you think that is for you. What does that say to the God of the universe who made you? Who made you? And by default, if he made you, he owns you. Talk about the ultimate sin to worship. And in God, it says here, is a jealous God. He longs for people to worship him when people don't. It makes God jealous. He desires that worship. Not because, know this, not because he needs your worship, but because he deserves your worship. God alone deserves your worship. And guys, ladies, when we let our hearts worship, find ultimate fulfillment, desire, affection in anything else, we disappoint God. Okay, so how do we identify idols? Now, next week and the following, we're going to look very specifically at a few counterfeit gods. Okay, we're going to drill down in them. This is going to be a little more general tonight. But how do you today say, hey, what maybe is in my life that could be becoming or is a counterfeit God? Okay, one, I think our emotions can help point to our gods. Okay, think of a time recently where you had an explosion of emotion, all right? Maybe it was fun and exciting and like, yay! Or maybe it was like anger and you literally broke something, all right? Maybe you threw your phone or something, okay? Think of that for a moment. Share it with your partner, all right? Go. Whoever's next to you. Find someone next to you. Emotional high, emotional low. What happened? All right. How many of you had an example that was like happiness? It was like a good emotion. It was okay. How many of you had a negative emotion? It was okay. So yeah, we have both extremes, right? All right, I remember one time I was in high school and I got really mad about something and I punched the wall and the wall didn't last. Okay, there was a hole in the wall in the drywall and that was a really awkward conversation with my mom. I was so angry about something. I was just like, I knew a pastor one time and he actually punched the wall when he was really angry. While being a pastor, no one saw it, but he broke his hand and he had to preach the next Sunday with a cast on his hand. Okay, that's awkward. That's like, or it's like, hey, how'd you get? So actually, he talked about it, and he just confessed to the church. He's like, hey, I lost it. But our emotions, they don't always say just because you have a high or a low doesn't mean that you have a counterfeit God. But it reveals what's really important to you. It reveals what's really important to you. How many of you have ever known someone who got dumped? Okay, and it just ruined their world, okay? Like literally, it's just like they couldn't function. Their grades went downhill. Or maybe you know someone athletically, right? And it's like, man, they had a poor performance, and man, they couldn't function. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't eat, and it's just like, they beat themselves up. I should have scored that goal. I should have ran a better time. I could have had that interception and I dropped it, whatever it be. Or maybe it's like, it could be schoolwork, right? And that might be like, oh, that's me. No. But there's some of you out there, and it's just like, man, I got a B on that test. My 4.0 is not going to happen, right? There are those. I hope there are those people in this room. Yeah, I hope so. But yeah. And it's like, all of us, what do our emotions point to that is so important to us? That's a clue. Think about this. What do you love? What do you trust? What do you obey? Okay, how do you know what you love? What do you spend your time thinking about? What do you spend your time imagining? Okay, I remember a time in junior high where this was soccer for me. And I remember sitting just anywhere. I could be, in the car. I could be in church. And I was thinking about a soccer game. And I was thinking what I would do when I got the ball and how I'd try to score a goal. And that's all I thought about. It had become an idol to me. It had become too important to me. What do you imagine? What do you daydream about? For some of you, that might be a person right now. Okay? And all you can do is think about him or her and just like, oh, I hope they notice me today. Oh, I wonder if they'll sit next to me in study hall, And it's just like, all you can think about is that person. Have they become an idol? What do you love? What do you trust? What do you trust? What do you find security in? Okay, think about that. One way to explore that idea, what is your greatest fear? What are your nightmares about? And again, that could be a relationship. Oh, I hope he doesn't dump me. Or I hope I don't fail that test. Or I hope I don't have a bad performance. Or what if I run out of money? Or what if I can't afford this car? Or what if I delete my Instagram by mistake? It'd be a good thing. It'd be a good thing. Good life choices. Okay. So, what is your greatest fear? That might point to an idol. Because what do we trust? What do we obey? You think that's a weird phrase? You're like, my parents, I hate it. Yeah, what do you obey? Listen to this. What desires, urges, or cravings do you feel most compelled to obey? What is it that says, hey, insert your name. Hey, Phil, come on over here. And you just say, okay, I'm coming. Okay, some of you, that might be food. Some of you girls, that might be chocolate, okay? Some of you guys, that might be a girl, okay? It might be that group of guys. And if they say, hey, we're going to make fun of this guy, we're going to pick on him, or we're going to go over here, and you just go. Are you a slave to them? Have even the sense of belonging in that group, has that become a god to you, that you need to do anything to belong, to fit? What do you obey? You see, because idols master you. Idols seek to take control of you. And you think, and so many people I've met say, I'm trying to live, more freely. I don't really believe in God, or I'm rejecting God. And it's like, they're not getting rid of a master, God. They're not getting rid of a Lord. They're just exchanging God, the Lord, for a different God, for a different master. And maybe it's money, maybe it's sex, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's moral freedom, whatever it is. They found another idol and they're going after it. But here's the issue. If it's anything but God, it will disappoint. If it's anything but God, it will disappoint you. It won't deliver. It won't deliver. Only God can deliver. And think about that. That's how God tells us that we should relate to Him. He wants us to love Him. He wants our affections to be all for Him. He wants us to trust Him and find security so that everything could go wrong in our lives, but we know I've got security in God because He loves me. He knows me. He's got a plan in whatever I'm going through. He wants us to obey Him, not just because He wants us to do His wishes, but He knows His wishes for our lives will bring us ultimate fulfillment for all of eternity. That's what God calls us to. You see, idols cannot be removed. They must be replaced. You can't just say, I have this problem over here. It's a person, it's a thing, it's a sin, whatever. And I have this issue. I want to get rid of it. You've got to replace it with a stronger love for God, a stronger trust in God, a stronger obedience to God. All right. We're going to wrap up with this verse real quick. All right, this is in 1 Samuel. And let me set the stage for what's about to happen here. Okay? In the previous few chapters, Israel has lost the Ark of the Covenant. All right, the Ark of the Covenant for Israel in the Old Testament, the people of God, represented God's presence. All right? God had led Israel in one of the most amazing moments in history out of bondage and slavery in Egypt. And they followed Him through the wilderness by following what? Anyone know? What did they follow? A pillar of fire by night, and what by day? A cloud by day. Well, then God gave them instructions in the wilderness to build this place of worship where His presence, His manifest presence, would dwell. And the middle, at the center of the tabernacle, was this thing called the Ark of the Covenant. And in it lay the law of God. Again, we read the first law of God earlier, right? When they had finished building it and they placed it in the Holy of Holies, that cloud, the presence of God, came down and dwelt. So for the people of Israel, and that presence of God is the same thing that parted the Red Sea. It parted the Red Sea. It destroyed the most powerful empire, Egypt, in the world at the time. And so God's visible presence, it symbolized that. Now, the people of Israel had exchanged true worship for God, and they had distorted worship. There were priests who were, when people brought food for sacrifice, they literally got a little warm on the altar, took it off, and ate it right away. Like, yeah, that's a good steak. And they had, literally, this happening. And it was Eli, the high priest's 2 sons. He was letting his 2 sons do that. And so God said, I will not let this happen. I will not let my people defame my name. And so what does He do? They go into battle and they carry the ark because they want the presence of God. Like, we won't lose. We've got the ark. And they're like walking in, like, woo! here we go, conquer. They get demolished. 30,000 people die. God just says, no, you will not win this battle. And the Philistines who defeated them, they took the Ark of the Covenant. How do you think the people of Israel felt? They lost what manifested, what symbolized the presence of God amongst them. They lost it because they'd lost true worship. And then Samuel, a new prophet, shows up. Samuel shows up, and he leads the people of Israel back to God. And the Philistines, because there's some things that God caused curses to come upon them, they return the ark. They bring the ark back in Jerusalem. And everyone's rejoicing and glad. And this is what Samuel says. Oops, sorry, I had it right here. Then Samuel said to all the house of Israel, if you are returning to the Lord with all your hearts, then you must rid yourselves of the foreign gods. And Ashtoreth, that's a foreign god, among you. Prepare your hearts for the Lord and serve him what? Only. And serve him what? Only. Guys, you can't have more than one God. The New Testament says, Jesus said, no man can have two masters. Who's your master? Who's your master this morning? Do you have a counterfeit God in your heart? We were made to worship. And because of that, our hearts so easily, because of sin, become idol factories. They create things. They cling to things that aren't God. And idols are anything more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart, your imagination. Anything you love with all your heart. Anything you find security in with all your heart. Anything you obey. And idols cannot be removed. They must be replaced. And God is looking for true worshipers. So in small group time tonight, what I want you to do is begin to enter into this conversation. What are some of those idols, those counterfeit gods in your life that you see? And because I think every one of you, maybe share this in a small group, can share an example of someone and they let one of those maybe good things become preeminent, and it destroyed them. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was sex. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was popularity. And they did everything for it, and it destroyed them. We know that false gods don't deliver.